Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Knowledge Compiled. Friends, today we'll discuss about the part 14 of Chinese military strategy that will unfold the history of China. Let's start with the today's video. First, in this video friends, we'll discuss on the topic about the summary of reassessment period. Friends, the whole video of will discuss about the Third Indochina War witnessed a shift from military conflict to diplomacy, resolving the Cambodian issue and normalize the Sino-Vietnamese relation. Friends, early 1980s saw a military conflict along the Sino-Vietnamese and Thai-Cambodian borders, overshadowing diplomatic efforts, and the period reflect complex geopolitics, emphasizing both armed confrontation and diplomatic challenges in the Southeast Asia. Let's start with today's first topic. First, we'll discuss about the 1979 problems unaddressed. Friends, the People Liberation Army faced problems with the tactic of human wave assault because a large group of the soldiers attacking at once, like waves, are found to be ineffective. For this, the PLA encountered problems with the precision and accuracy of artillery. And the use of artillery such as cannon and heavy weapons was not accurate or efficient. There is also a failure in the political program. Friends, political program implemented during the 1979 campaign were not successful. Strategies related to the political engagement and governance faced shortcomings and were not effective. And after the 1979 conflict, the PLA did not take steps to resolve or improve the highlighted problems. Friends, the lack of action suggests that the military did not adequately learn from or adapt after the war. These unaddressed problems reflect weaknesses in the military strategies employed during the Sino-Vietnamese War in 1979 and the failure highlighted in the post-1979 period indicate that lessons from the war were not learned or applied. This has an implication on the China also. Friends, the failure to address these issues could weaken China's military capabilities and effectiveness in future conflict. It may lead to the lack of innovation and adaptation in the military strategies. Similarly, on the Vietnam side, Vietnam might perceive these weaknesses as potential advantage or vulnerability in the event of future conflict. Next, we'll discuss about the challenges with the political program. Friends, the strategy of human wave assault was not successful, and this tactic involves sending a large number of soldiers to overwhelm the enemy, but it did not work as intended. Efforts to lower the morale of the enemy were not fruitful, and strategies to break the spirit of the opposing forces did not achieve the desired result. There was an attempt to gain support from the civilian population, but it was unsuccessful. The military or the political program aimed at convincing civilians to support the Chinese effort did not work. Friends, failures in winning over civilians were linked to reports of atrocities committed by the Chinese soldiers. Negative actions or behaviors by the Chinese military resulted in a negative perception among the civilian population. Friends, these challenges with political program indicate shortcomings in the ability to conduct effective psychological and civil military operation. Negative report of atrocities may have damaged the China's international reputation and diplomatic standing. Next, about the unchanged tactics. Friends, the Chinese infantry tactic used at Laoshan in 1984 closely resembles the mass tactic employed during the Sino-Vietnamese War of 1979. Despite previous failures, there was a lack of significant changes or improvement in the military approach. Mass assault tactics involving large group of soldiers attacking simultaneously persisted and were still in widespread use. The strategy relied on the overwhelming the enemy through sheer number rather than emphasizing more sophisticated or versatile approach. Friends, the mass assault tactics were not as effective as fire and movement strategies. Fire and movement involves a combination of suppressing fire and coordinated advances, providing a more flexible and a strategic approach. Friends, the persistence of the mass assault tactics suggests a lack of innovation and a failure to evolve military strategies. This lack of change may impact the effectiveness of Chinese military operation and their ability to address different challenges. Next, about the improved artillery operations. Friends, the PLA, People Liberation Army, demonstrated improvement in the artillery operation in 1984. This suggests that there were positive changes or development in how artillery was utilized compared to the previous period. The artillery operation proved effective in breaking up the enemy attack. It indicates that artillery played a crucial role in disrupting and weakening the Vietnamese offensive strategies. Next, about the artillery was successful in inflicting heavy casualties on the Vietnamese forces even from the long ranges. It implies that the PLA artillery capability were enhanced, allowing them to target and damage the enemy effectively over extended distances. Friends, the improvement in the artillery operation represent a positive development in the PLA military capability, and the ability to break up the attack and inflict heavy casualty suggests a more effective and strategic use of artillery compared to previous period. And from the Vietnam side, the effectiveness of PLA artillery operation poses a challenge for the Vietnamese forces. Vietnam may need to adjust its strategies to counter the improved artillery capabilities of the Chinese military. Next, about the changing attitude. Friends, some Chinese soldiers began to recognize the shortcomings and the failure of Maoist political work system. It implies a shift in the perception among military personnel regarding the effectiveness of the political ideology implemented within the armed forces. The three basic principles of the political work, which likely constituted key tenets of Maoist ideology within the military, started losing their impact on the People Liberation Army. Friends, the declining influence suggests a changing attitude among soldiers toward the core political principles they were previously expected to adhere to. The changing attitude indicate that the political and ideological foundation within the PLA were being questioned and re-evaluated in the context of the Sino-Vietnamese War. Friends, the realization of the failure of Maoist political work system may lead to the re-evaluation of political strategies within the military. Next, about the disillusionment of ideology. Friends, young Chinese soldiers develop a cynical attitude toward the belief that the party was infallible. These were the growing skepticism among the younger generation of soldiers regarding the party's absolute correctness. Friends, there was a sense of doubt among the soldiers regarding the effectiveness of the ideological principles promoted by the party, and the established ideological guidelines were being questioned in terms of their practical value and impact. Friends, the belief in a unique philosophy of war and the concept of magic weapon lost credibility. Soldiers began to question the validity and effectiveness of these previously upheld and distinctive military and ideological concept. Friends, the disillusionment with ideology suggests that the ideological foundation of the military was under scrutiny during the Sino-Vietnamese War. Moving next. Next is about the loss of faith in the political work. Friends, political officers encountered difficulties in convincing soldiers about the advantages of the political work system. The effectiveness of the political work system was being questioned or challenged, leading to resistance or skepticism among the soldiers. Point number two, about the young soldiers expressed a lack of confidence in a belief that memorized political phrases would lead to success on the battlefield. Friends, the traditional reliance on the memorization of ideological phrases was losing credibility among the younger generation of the soldiers. The loss of faith in the political work during the Sino-Vietnamese War indicate a struggle to maintain the ideological and political control within the military. Friends, challenges in convincing soldiers about the advantages of political work system may suggest a broader discontent of or skepticism regarding the political ideological promoted by the government. Next, about the erosion of three principles. Friends, the three basic principles of the Maoist political work system, which likely serve as foundation tenets, begin to lose their influence within the PLA. Friends, the erosion suggests a diminishing impact of these political principles on the military from 1979 to 1984. Zhu Miahong account reflect a prevailing sense of betrayal among the intelligence cadre within the PLA in the early 1980s. This indicates that members of the intelligence community felt disillusioned or let down during this period. The erosion of the three basic principles during the specified time frame implies that the political dynamics within the PLA were undergoing significant changes in the aftermath of the Sino-Vietnamese War. Next, about the impact of soldiers' belief. Friends, soldiers such as Zhu Miahong were exposed to both official and unofficial accounts of the 1979 campaign. And this exposure led to questioning the legitimacy and effectiveness of the People Liberation Army. The exposure to different accounts of the 1979 campaign prompted soldiers like Zhu Miahong to doubt the legitimacy and effectiveness of the PLA. This suggests that the information available to the soldiers led to a re-evaluation of their belief regarding the military. Next, the failure in the conflict with the Vietnam contributed to soldiers' doubt about the PLA capability and success in military operation. Friends, the unworkable nature of the political work program further raised doubt about the ideological system within the PLA. Soldiers questioned the practicality and effectiveness of the political work initiative implemented within the military. Friends, the impact on the soldiers' belief underscore the profound effect of the 1979 campaign on the perception of the PLA and its ideological foundation. Next, learning from experience. Friends, soldiers engaged in reflection on their experience during the war with Vietnam, and this indicate a conscious effort by the soldiers to assess and learn from their first-hand experience in the conflict. Through this reflection, soldiers came to a realization about the shortcomings of their previous belief, particularly those formed during the Maoist times. Friends, there is an acknowledgement that the ideological and the military principles held during Maoist times were not entirely effective or applicable in the context of the war with Vietnam. The soldier reflection signifies a proactive effort to learn from the specific experience and challenges encountered during the Sino-Vietnamese War. Next, we'll discuss about some escalating tension between China and Vietnam in mid 1980s. First, we'll discuss about the background. Friends, Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam, exhibited no indication of withdrawing its presence from Cambodia. This suggests that the situation in Cambodia remained a point of contention between China and Vietnam. The Chinese People Liberation Army continued to face unresolved issues stemming from the 1979 Sino-Vietnamese War. The persisting challenges from the previous conflict may have influenced China's stance and actions in subsequent years. And despite flaws in the political work system, which had been previously identified, China maintained its position. And this indicates a persistence in the political approach, even if acknowledged to have shortcomings. Friends, China issued a threat of a second lesson, implying a warning or the possibility of another military campaign or conflict. And the use of such language suggests a continuation of a firm stance by China, potentially implying a willingness to use force. Friends, the lack of Vietnamese withdrawal from the Cambodia and the unresolved issues from the 1979 campaign create a tense geopolitical backdrop. And despite flaws, China's determination and the threat of a second lesson underscore its commitment to address the situation in the region. And the threat of the second lesson may have influenced the diplomatic relations and regional stability with potential consequences for China's image and Vietnam's strategic decision. Moving next. Next, we'll discuss about some Chinese threat. Friends, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a warning to Vietnam, specifically cautioning about the potential consequences if attacks in Cambodia continued. And this suggests that China expressed its concern and dissatisfaction with Vietnam actions in Cambodia. Chinese Foreign Minister Wu Zhiqian in Singapore directly threatened the Vietnam with a second lesson. Friends, the use of the term second lesson implies a warning of possible military action or a significant response if certain action by the Vietnam persisted. Friends, the threat from the China persisted later that week in Bangkok, and the continuity of threat across different locations indicates a consistent and firm stance by the China. Friends, the warning and the threat from China highlight a heightened tension between China and Vietnam, particularly regarding the situation in Cambodia. And the reference to a second lesson suggests a political escalation of hostilities or a significant punitive response by China. These threats may have had diplomatic, political, and strategic implications for the relationship between China and Vietnam. And the use of strong language and the warning in multiple locations suggest a deliberate effort by China to convey its seriousness. Next point about the Vietnamese action. Friends, despite the warning and threat from the China, in January 1985, Vietnam chose to ignore them. This indicates a defiance or a disregard for the potential consequences outlined by the China. Next, that the People Army of Vietnam launched attacks and successfully captured major resistance camp in Cambodia. And this suggests a proactive military move by Vietnam in the region, potentially in the defiance of the Chinese warning. Friends, Vietnam's decision to ignore Chinese threat and conduct military operations in Cambodia indicate a determined and an independent approach to regional affairs. The successful capture of resistance camp suggests a strategic and assertive military move by Vietnam. Friends, Vietnam action may have further strained its relationship with China and had consequences for regional stability. The military operation in Cambodia could have geopolitical implication and may have influenced the dynamics between Vietnam and other neighboring countries. Moving next. Next is about the ongoing conflict. Friends, Vietnam continued its military operation by pursuing Cambodian resistance fighters along the Thai-Cambodian border. And this indicates ongoing military activities suggesting that the conflict extended beyond the initial confrontation. Friends, China and Vietnam engaged in artillery fire and infantry clashes during this period. And the involvement of artillery and infantry indicates a more intense and direct military confrontation between the two nations. Friends, the continued pursuit of Cambodian resistance fighters and the direct clashes between China and Vietnam suggest a prolonged and escalated conflict. And the use of artillery and infantry indicates a significant military engagement, underscoring the severity of the situation. Friends, the ongoing conflict had implication for the stability of the region, diplomatic relation, and the security of the involved nation. Next, about the shift in the Chinese policy. Friends, Deng Xiaoping, a prominent Chinese leader, initiated a strategic shift in the Chinese policy during the specified period. And the shift indicates a change in the overall approach or direction of the China's strategic thinking. Friends, the motivation behind the shift was influenced by the perceived reduction in the threat posed by the Soviet Union. As the geopolitical landscape changed with the decrease in the perceived Soviet threat, China adjusted its strategic priorities. And as part of the strategic shift, China introduced an active defense as a new defense policy in May 1983. Active defense implies a proactive yet defensive military posture, suggesting a readiness to respond to the threat but without seeking aggressive expansion. Friends, the shift in the Chinese policy reflect an adaptation to the changing geopolitical circumstances, particularly a re-evaluation of the Soviet threat and global power dynamics. And the introduction of active defense indicates a nuanced approach to the national security, emphasizing a defensive stance while retaining the ability to respond assertively. Friends, the shift in the Chinese strategy and the introduction of active defense may have implication for the China's foreign relations. Moving next we'll study about some internal study and realization. Friends, Deng Xiaoping, a key Chinese leader, acknowledged the necessity of addressing internal issues. The recognition suggests an awareness of challenges or shortcomings within the country that require attention. Friends, a study conducted during the period from December 1984 to March 1985 focus on specific aspect likely related to China's internal and external affairs. Friends, the duration of study indicates a dedicated effort to thoroughly examine and understand the certain issues. The study revealed limitations within the People Liberation Army concerning the execution of the potential second lesson. Friends, this acknowledgement indicates that despite earlier threat, there were identified challenges or constraints within the PLA that needed to be addressed. Friends, Deng Xiaoping, a recognition of internal issues suggests a commitment to addressing challenges within the country, and study findings regarding the PLA limitations in executing a second lesson are significant as they likely influence strategic decisions and military planning. Next, about the consequence of attempting a second lesson. Friends, the analysis conducted during the internal study concluded that the PLA might not succeed in attempting a second lesson, and the assessment suggests a realistic and pragmatic evaluation of the potential outcome of such military actions. Friends, the analysis likely indicating that an attempt a second lesson posed a risk of damaging China's internal reputation and international repercussion, negative perception, and have potential diplomatic fallout may have been considered as part of the reassessment. Friends, the political failure of the second lesson could lead to a weakening of public support for the government. Negative outcomes in the military action may impact public confidence in the government decision making and leadership. Friends, a political failure could hinder China's military modernization, and the negative consequences of a military setback may have practical implication for the modernization and development of PLA. Moving next we'll discuss about some response and modernization. Friends, in December 1985, an enlarged meeting of the Central Military Commission took place. The Central Military Commission is a key decision-making body in China's military structure, responsible for overall military policy. Friends, at the meeting, the Central Military Commission instructed the People Liberation Army to plan the modernization of the Chinese armed forces, and this directive reflects a strategic decision to enhance and upgrade the capability of the military. Friends, part of the modernization plan include a focus on improving hardware. This indicates an emphasis on upgrading and modernizing military equipment and technology. Friends, the modernization plan also involved attention to the personnel program, and this suggests a commitment to improve the skill, training, and overall readiness of the military personnel. Another aspect of modernization plan was to rebuild a logistics system, and this highlights the importance of efficient and effective logistical support for military operations. Friends, the focus on improving hardware personnel program and rebuilding logistical system implies a comprehensive approach to modernization, addressing multiple facets of military readiness, and this response may have strategic implication for China's military posture both regionally and globally. Next, next we'll discuss about some modernization amidst persistent border tension, about the Third Indochina War, a shift in the tactics. First, we'll discuss about some Chinese modernization, that is, first is the modernization effect. Friends, the impact of the modernization program was not immediately felt on the Sino-Vietnamese border during the specified period of 1986 and 87. And this suggests that the changes initiated as part of the modernization program had not yet translated into noticeable effect in the specific context of the border region. Despite the ongoing modernization changes, PLA Liberation Army units continue to operate as usual, and this indicates that at least during this period there was no significant alteration in the operational behavior of the PLA unit on the Sino-Vietnamese border. Friends, the delay in the impact of the modernization program on the Sino-Vietnamese border suggests that the effect of military upgrades and changes take time to materialize in specific operational context. Next, about the continued Vietnamese action. Friends, despite the ongoing situation and development, Vietnamese continue to press against the Cambodian resistance forces. This indicates that the military activities in the region were sustained, suggesting a persistent engagement in the Cambodian conflict. Friends, the continued military activities by the Vietnam underscore the ongoing involvement in the Cambodian conflict, indicating a prolonged and active role in the region. Friends, Vietnam's persistence in pressing the Cambodian resistance suggests a commitment to its strategic objectives in the area. And the ongoing military action may have diplomatic, geopolitical, and regional stability implications. Next is about the artillery intensification. Friends, People Liberation Army increased the RT shelling along the Sino-Vietnamese border during the specified period. And this suggests an escalation in the military activities, particularly involving artillery. In 1985, PLA artillery fired over 8 lakh rounds into the Vizuan district, and this indicates a significant intensity of artillery fire, potentially reflecting a strategic effort to exert pressure or control in that specific area. On October 14th, 1986, there was an intense artillery barrage with the 35,000 rounds into the Than Thue village in a single day. And this event highlights a specific and intense military action, potentially signaling a significant escalation of hostilities. Moving next about the January 8. Friends, on January 8, 1987, there was a notable artillery escalation with 60,000 rounds fired into the Vizuan district. And the artillery barrage was accompanied by division-sized infantry attacks, indicating a coordinated and a substantial military operation. Friends, the increased artillery shelling and the scale of rounds fired suggest a significant escalation of hostilities along the Sino-Vietnamese border, and the coordination of artillery attack with the infantry action indicate a strategic and a coordinated military effort. Friends, the specific targeting of villages and districts suggests a focus and a military strategy with potential consequences for the civilian population and regional stability. Moving next is about some Chinese Changing Chinese tactics. Friends, there was a notable shift in the Chinese attack during the specified period. Instead of relying on the large scale infantry attack, there was a change in the focus toward ferocious artillery barrage. The transition in tactics was accompanied by a reduction or cessation of a large scale infantry attack. The last major attack in the Vizuan employing a new tactics occurred in 1987. Friends, the shift in the tactics from the infantry attack to artillery barrage suggests a change in the military strategy employed by the Chinese forces during the Sino-Vietnamese border. Friends, the change in the tactics may have been driven by a reassessment of the effectiveness in the large scale infantry attack or a strategic decision to prioritize artillery barrage. Next, about the final noteworthy incidents. Friends, on October 5th, 1987, the Chinese People Liberation Army Air Force shot down a Vietnamese MiG 21. And this incident indicates a direct military confrontation involving aircraft, representing a notable escalation in hostilities. Friends, the shooting down of Vietnamese MiG 21 is highlighted as the only air to air engagement during the Sino-Vietnamese War, and this underscores the significance of the event in the context of overall conflict. The incident is deemed symbolic as it marked the end of the Maoist era in the People Liberation Army, and it considered a foundational moment or for Chinese future armed forces, representing a shift or transformation in the military strategy and capabilities. Friends, the air to air engagement is significant not only for its immediate military implication but also for its symbolic value in signaling a new era in the Chinese armed forces. Next, friends, last topic we'll discuss about the some diplomacy unveiled, that is shifting alliance, economic realities, and the end of the Third Indochina War. First, about the context and diplomacy of war. Friends, the early 1980s were characterized by the military conflict along the two key borders, that is Sino-Vietnamese border and Thai-Cambodian border. Friends, in Sino-Vietnamese border, tension and conflict between China and the Vietnam persisted along their shared borders. And in Thai-Cambodian borders, military events also occurred along the Thai-Cambodian borders involving conflict and hostilities. Friends, the provided context, it highlights that during this period, military event took precedence and overshadowed diplomatic activities. And the implication is that the regional experience heightened military tension and engagement, potentially hindering diplomatic initiatives. Friends, the mention of military conflict along the both borders suggests a complex geopolitical landscape in Southeast Asia during the early 1980s, and the emphasis on the military events overshadowing diplomatic activities underscore the challenges in achieving peaceful resolution and the prevalence of the armed confrontation during this period. Next we'll discuss about some formation of CGDK, that is Coalition Government of Democratic Kampuchea. Friends, the Coalition Government of Democratic Kampuchea was formed in Cambodia in 1982. The coalition aimed to bring together various political fractions against the common perceived threat of Vietnamese invaders. the coalition government of Democratic Kampuchea, while considered weak, represented a united front against the Vietnamese invasion. And despite internal differences, the coalition sought to present a cohesive front in the face of external aggression. Friends, the CGDK became a focal point for international support, particularly from key players such as China, United States, and the ASEAN, that is Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The support extended to CGDK hindered Vietnamese quick victory in the conflict, and by receiving backing from the major powers and the regional organizations, CGDK regained strategic and diplomatic support that affected the dynamics of the conflict. Friends, the formation of CGDK and its ability to present a united front symbolize a collective effort to resist Vietnamese invaders in Cambodia. And the coalition establishment and external support contributed to a more protracted and a challenging situation for Vietnam in achieving a swift victory. Next point about the Vietnamese diplomatic relation. Friends, Vietnam took steps to strengthen its ties with the Soviet Union, and this include joining the Council of Mutual Economic Assistance, that is CEMA, an economic organization among the socialist country, and signing a friendship treaty. Friends, the decision to join CEMA and signing a friendship treaty with the Soviet Union mark a symbolic alignment of Vietnam with the Soviet side in the Sino-Vietnamese rivalry. And this geopolitical alignment reflected Vietnam's strategic choice during the period of intense global Cold War dynamics. As a result of strengthened ties, Vietnam received significant economic and military aid from Soviet Union. And this support played a crucial role in Vietnam post-war reconstruction and military capabilities. Friends, the support Vietnam received from the Soviet Union decreased after 1986, and this reduction in support was due to the shift in the Soviet policy, reflecting changes in the broader global geopolitical landscape and the internal dynamics of the Soviet Union. Friends, Vietnam alignment with the Soviet Union was significant in the context of the Cold War dynamics, especially the rivalry between the Soviet Union and China. And the economic and the military aid from the Soviet Union played a vital role in the Vietnam post-war recovery and defense capabilities. Next, about the Vietnamese response and economic reform. Friends, Vietnam facing a reduction in Soviet aid after 1986 responded by initiating economic reforms, and the decline in the Soviet support necessitated a shift in the Vietnam economic strategy. At the 6th Congress of the Communist Party of Vietnam held in 1986, significant leadership changes took place. Nguyen Van Ly was elected as the Secretary General of the Communist Party of Vietnam during this Congress. Friends, the election of Nguyen Van Ly marked a move toward an innovative leadership in Vietnam. Ly advocated for economic development as a means to reduce the Vietnam dependence on the Soviet aid, recognizing the need for self-reliance. Friends, one of the key objectives of the Nguyen Van Ly leadership was to reduce the Vietnam resilience on the Soviet economic assistance, and this reflects a strategic response to the changing geopolitical landscape and the need for economic self-sufficiency. Friends, Nguyen Van Ly also called for the end of the occupation of Cambodia. And this represented a diplomatic and a strategic shift, potentially aiming to improve relations with the international community and address the regional concern. Friends, the election of Nguyen Van Ly and the subsequent economic reforms signified a recognition within the Communist Party of Vietnam of the necessity for innovation and the self-reliance in the face of changing global dynamics. Moving next in continuation, next point is about the shift in the diplomacy. Friends, Vietnam, China, and the Soviet Union underwent a diplomatic shift, redirecting their focus from the international differences to the internal priorities. This indicates a recognition of the need to address domestic concern and prioritize internal stability. In July 1987, Vietnam and Indonesia jointly proposed talks among all the belligerents involved in the regional conflict. And the proposal suggested a diplomatic initiative to engage all parties in dialogue, signaling a potential shift toward the peaceful resolution. In December 1987, Prince Norodom Sihanouk, representing a Cambodian resistance, held a meeting with the Prime Minister Hun Sen of Cambodia. And the purpose of the meeting was to discuss a potential peace settlement, indicating a diplomatic effort to address the long-standing conflict in the region. Friends, the shift in the diplomatic focus from the international differences to internal priorities suggests a re-evaluation of the regional dynamics and the recognition of the importance of the internal stability. Moving next we'll discuss about some towards the end of the war. Friends, a significant development occurred with the meeting between a Cambodian resistance and the Hanoi installed government. And this meeting signaled an acknowledgement of the legitimacy of the Hanoi installed government, possibly indicating a step toward reconciliation. Friends, Hanoi announced a plan to withdraw half of its forces from Cambodia by the end of 1988. And this marked a concrete step toward de-escalation and a reduction in the military presence in Cambodia. Treaty negotiations took place involving various parties until September 1991. And the negotiations aimed at reaching a comprehensive agreement to address the long-standing conflict in the region. Friends, on October 13, 1991, a treaty was signed involving key players such as China, United States, ASEAN, and various Cambodian factions. This treaty represents a diplomatic effort to bring about a resolution to the conflict in the region. And last, that is on November 10, 1991, China and Vietnam signed a joint communique, officially normalizing their relation. And this marked a crucial step in diplomatic landscape, signaling the end of hostilities between China and Vietnam. Friends, the meeting between Cambodian resistance and the Hanoi installed government and subsequent negotiations signaled a willingness to address the root cause of the conflict in Cambodia. Hanoi plan for withdrawal and a signing of the treaty indicated a commitment to de-escalation and diplomatic solutions. Last, about the conclusion. Friends, the concluding paragraph underscores a significant shift from the military conflict to the diplomatic effort during the Third Indochina War. The event mentioned, such as meeting, negotiations, and treaties, reflect a transition towards seeking diplomatic solution to the long-standing issues in the region. Friends, the conclusion mentioned an upcoming section that will explore the challenges faced by the China during this period. This suggests that despite diplomatic progress, there were challenges and complexities that impact China's role and action during the Third Indochina War. Friends, the conclusion portrays a complex narrative of Third Indochina War, highlighting not only the military aspect but also the crucial diplomatic development that shaped the resolution of conflict in the region. And the shift from war to diplomacy, coupled with the normalization of the Sino-Vietnamese relations, indicate a broader commitment to the regional stability and the pursuit of the peaceful resolution. Friends, here we come to the end of part 14. Friends, please do subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more updates. Please like, share, and subscribe among your friends. Thank you.